Kenny's in trouble. He's going to run. He's going to get the first down.
Don't sleep on those legs. Oh, he faked the slide. Sauce time. The Pitt Panthers have pulled a stunning upset over the West Virginia Mountaineers.
And Johnny Majors gets a ride across the field.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Simple 5. As always, I'm your host, Zach Kaminsky. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Mason Kling and Kent Vanderwood is back this week. First off, Mason, how we doing?
Doing well, man. Feeling good to be back now that we kind of had a week break in there, but ready to get back. We're closer than ever to college football.
Days are counting down. Kent, how you feeling after the little hiatus?
Feel good. Had my rest. I'm ready to be back on. Happy to be back on, and less than 6 weeks till Pitt football. So let's get it going.
I'm going to set it better myself. So since we last talked, there has been a lot of Pitt football news. ACC Media Days happen, and we'll cover those. But before that, we want to first talk with the interview that Pat gave. So Pat goes on I think it's a Twitter Live, something like that. Or it was posted, it was a Twitter Live posted to the Schultz Ford Twitter page, which is a local Ford dealer in Wexford, up north of the city. It's basically a 20 minutes of just stirring the pot for Pat. Let's start with one of the more explosive comments. It had to do with the Peach Bowl. To sum it up, basically, he tells the two hosts, Colin Dunlap and Richard Bazzi, that, had Kenny Pickett played, Pitt would have won the Peach Bowl, which I think is a pretty fair assessment, right?
Yeah, for sure. Literally, anybody watching that game can kind of make that assumption. I think he put the number on it. He's a 21-point difference guy. I think even that is kind of a little bit conservative, but that's a biased opinion.
Yeah, I fully agree. And he also not only said that Kenny would be a 21-point difference, he said if Patty had stayed in, it would be a 14-point difference. So he put a number on that, too.
I agree with that. I mean, you think about that game, right? Patty marches down the field in that first drive, scores a touchdown, gets hurt, comes out. Michigan State then needed that injury to not only stop the Pitt offense, but if I remember correctly, there was like an Izzy muffed kick that set up Michigan really well deep in Pitt territory. It's like
it flipped the field and all the momentum. I remember exactly what you're talking about. It was like at that point I knew we were in trouble.
Yeah. So the instant rebuttal from a lot of Michigan State fans is that, well, Kenneth Walker is a similar difference. Now, I would say to the average team, yes, but think about what Pitt did to good running backs last year. They ate them up. Like, Sean Tucker basically could run on anyone, and then in that last week of the season against Pitt, he got 22 yards. I think that equating a quarterback against a bottom 10 pass defense in the country and a running back against a top 10 rush defense in the country is not the same. Michigan State fans, you got to chill out.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with the first part that you said there, that you could argue a running back being like the same tier of player missing, but I don't think really in any situation that it is.
I was saying he wasn't like the same tier.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood you. Yeah, it's a completely different thing. Really, if you have a good offensive line, you can kind of get by with having an okay running back. So not really the same with a quarterback.
Having your second string running back in a game like that is not anywhere near the same as having your second, let alone third string quarterback in for the majority of the game.
Yes.
So building off that, he then went on to say, I think the most nuclear take of the interview, which is that Pitt would be competing for Big Ten titles every year if they were in the Big Ten, based on how they, played with just a backup quarterback against Michigan State. Now, I like that. I like that when a coach talks shit, but I think that was probably the hardest to defend quote from that interview, because Narduzzi is, I think the stat is he's 1-6 against the Big Ten, or 1-5. because he's 1-3 against Penn State and then lost bowl games to Michigan State and Northwestern. And then, as much as I love Pitt, I don't think they're beating Ohio State year in, year out. So,
yeah, no, let's just hope that he was kind of speaking in hyperbole and that he was just kind of defending the guys like, head coaches do. But yeah, that was definitely, I think we can all take that with a grain of salt, except for everybody from the Big Ten who was incredibly triggered in the comments. And it is hilarious that we live rent-free in their head. The only people that I think can say anything comes down to Ohio State because they're just, better than everybody else. And then honestly Penn State because they had our number the last couple times. But they are just so mad that he even said it.
and I'll say, probably should have won the last game against Penn State to go 2-2 in that series. But I'm going to let that go. I can't hold that hate in my heart.
Yeah, and honestly, if Pitt had played Penn State last year, it wouldn't have been close. Pitt would have beaten Penn State last year. So
Yeah, they probably beat everyone except Ohio State and Michigan, but
Yeah, no, I think that's probably fair for last year. Which if we pull a Wisconsin and draw that side of the conference, like there's no there's no reason to think that we couldn't be competing for one every year. So if you think about it in that tense, like that's not
exactly.
that crazy to think about.
I'll take our chances against like Purdue and Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, I mean, we can we'll get to test out Wisconsin in 2026.
Let me put that one on my calendar now.
Circle it.
All right, let's enough with the hypothetical. Let's go into, I think, the most telling quote, which was his complaints about Mark Whipple, which did get a lot of criticism for what he said. I mean, the crux of what he said is basically that Whipple did not like running the ball, and he said, we're running for, like you said, as an exaggeration, like 10 yards of carry in the ACC championship game, and he's still throwing the ball at the end of the game. I wanted a coordinator. I don't know if he said he likes Whipple, but he's like, our new coordinator is going to bring more running into the offense.
I think basically what he said was it's tough. It was tough for Kenny, and it's tough for probably any QB to basically still be so successful when the other team knows you're going to throw the ball. And that was when he was like, yeah, everybody knew we were going to throw the ball because everybody knew our old defensive coordinator never ran the ball. And then he basically went on to say, for an example, we were playing Wake Forest and they had the 116th best run defense in the country and we were getting 10 yards of carry. And he still insisted on throwing the ball every play. I think that's what he was getting at, but
yeah. And
there were a lot of Nebraska fans reacting to this, saying, pulling up the stats from the game, like the yardage averages per attempt and whatnot. And he actually ran the ball more than he passed in that game or whatever. But that was you got to remember that we were up. I forget what the final score was, but for the last 3 drives in that game, we were just eating clock. And if we had a 1 or 2 yard carry, we couldn't really care less. So when you break it down, look at the stats when the game was kind of actually in crunch time and actually mattered, it was definitely more pass heavy and you could see it.
Yeah. So just to dive into that, game ends 45-21. Pickett goes 20 for 33 with 253. Now, the team had 38 rushes for 112 yards, which comes out to 3 yards of carry, which is a little misleading because you're including sacks in that as well. But if you look at Izzy Abanikanda, the best rusher on the day, he carried 9 times for 55 yards, and that comes out to something around 6 yards of carry. Our best runner was putting in work. And I got into a fight with a Nebraska fan. I was like, listen, you're not going to get the 2022 Pitt offense. You're going to get the 2021 Pitt offense. You're going to get the 2019, 2020 ones. Whipple could not design a good run play. He loved to just hand the ball off to a stationary running back in shotgun and get 1 or 2 yards, most of the time -1. And then he's going to throw 14 screens a game for a combined 7 yards. Like, as much as, like, Whipple did, like, I'm not sure how much Whipple did. Like, it's just Kenny reading with a Bolitnikoff receiver getting open and then therefore getting other guys open. Like, yes, he's a respected coordinator, but you're not going to get this high-flying offense at Nebraska. You're going to get probably a shitty offense. You don't have as good of a quarterback, and you definitely don't have as good receivers in Nebraska that Pitt had last year.
Yeah, they're gonna get the shovel pass era Whipple, which we all know way too well as incredibly frustrating. Until Kenny kind of broke out and became an incredible passer that really opened it up. But until then, it was so frustrating to watch. And I don't really see it going different in Nebraska.
Yeah, for sure. They're gonna have some frustrating years probably there with him at the helm of the offense. I feel like they're gonna be expecting that ACC championship offense, and they're gonna be disappointed. But I know we talked about this in our Big Ten preview. Who's their quarterback right now?
It's Hudson Card from Texas.
Oh yeah, because what's his name transferred out? Okay,
Martinez. Yeah,
Martinez. Yeah. So yeah, no, they're. I don't see that going necessarily very well, especially for the first year or two.
I mean, honestly, I don't think he's there longer than a year. Scott Frost is getting fired.
Yeah, they'll probably clean house after that, so he'll just be he'll be a casualty of the Frost era.
He'll probably go somewhere else because, like, he is a respected coordinator. But if you ask any Pitt fan, like, those first 2 offenses he coordinated, the 19 and 20, I mean, obviously he didn't have the talent at receiver, and like the O-line is sort of a revolving door. Kenny gets hurt, I think, in both of those years. But he got hurt for a significant amount of time in 2020. But, like, it wasn't a good offense to watch. It was a lot of drops, which I think Vernon Marion helped with, but, like, it was bad run plays, screens, and not a lot of else.
Yeah. He's definitely going to ride. He's going to be able to ride this year for a couple, regardless of how, the next 2 go. There'll probably always be someone out there that'll take a chance on him. So you're welcome, Mark Whipple, I guess.
All right. I want to move to ACC Media Days.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start off with the biggest news. College Game Day announced their Week 1 pick. It's the Backyard Brawl.
Let's fucking go.
I am. Oh. So the only thing that confused me about this is they said they're doing the show from inside the stadium. So does that mean they're not? Like they said they're doing an hour-long special from inside the stadium. Is that going to be a pre-recorded thing, or are they still going to do like the outdoor thing where all the fans are around them? Like, they have to do that, right?
Oh, I didn't even see that. I didn't see that they're inside the stadium. That would suck. They better be outside.
Yeah, that's like what College Game Day is. I bet, you know what, though? I bet they're probably doing just like a mini version of it because they're going to have to fly out to wherever they're going on Saturday.
I was going to say, they're going somewhere else on Saturday, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's just like, of course, it's like half of College Game Day.
Oh yeah, they're going to Notre Dame, Ohio State on Saturday.
Yeah, which makes sense. But it is still really cool that we get like people. That's like one of the first games people are going to tune into. It's kind of what's going to kick off their season. Good old fashioned Big East rivalry.
All right, I know I saw this on Twitter, but like, if you could pick one place for them to do it from, like somewhere funny, like where would you pick?
I did see Zach. I think it was you who sent it into our group chat of it. Them just like outside of jeans.
That would be the number one answer is the Zalema lot.
Yeah. That would be
Zalema lot, Semple lot, or like in front of like jeans.
Yeah, I'm trying to run through my Rolodex.
Semple lot would be pretty good. On Cardiac Hill. They say it won't be a normal version of the show. I'm not seeing anything about it, but they have to do the outdoor thing. By the way, this is the first time it's been in Pittsburgh since 2005. So
Who are we playing that weekend? That we got College Game Day in 2005.
that was a Notre Dame game, which is a
Yeah.
loss. Then it was the time before that, and the only other time or so was 2003 when we upset number 5 Virginia Tech.
Wow,
Damn.
feels good to be back.
Yeah,
That
welcome
com-
back, College Game Day. Come
It's
again.
honest. It's shocking that it's only been 3 times, especially because they didn't come for the Penn State series at all.
Well, hopefully we'll get some more information about what they're planning to do pre-game. We can fill up the gold lot or wherever they do it and get a little rowdy, get some sign making going.
I want you to hear from sources that they're doing it live from Pie Express. They're going to be in the basement.
So let's go. They're going to do in the top floor of Mario's right in front of the shot wheel.
You're gonna hear their shoes unsticking from the floor at Mario's. All right.
Hey, that's Thursday night. That's Thursday night. They could get Long Island's at Hems too.
Oh, okay. All right, now we're cooking.
What's that old guy's name? Not
Gene.
No, I don't. The guy who puts the mascot head on. Why can I not think of his name right now?
Oh, Lee Corso.
Lee Corso. Yes, you do not want to see him off of Long Island. He's already senile enough.
Dude, he might die.
Give him a couple Long Island pitchers and give him the Panther head and let him go crazy.
Yeah, that would be. If he doesn't put the Panther head on, I'm gonna be disappointed. He always picks the hometown guys, so
Yeah, that's what I'm banking on.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the meat of media days. Let's run through some quick news as far as the roster goes. Bub Means, the wide receiver transfer from Louisiana Tech via Tennessee, is eligible for the upcoming season. That's a big, fast, big play receiver, averaged close to 20 yards for reception last year. That's super important for the offense if guys like Jaden Bradley aren't ready to go. And probably slots into replacing Taysir Mack, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think it's definitely helpful and definitely helps boost the wide receiver room for this year. And I know they have depth, but I'm excited to see what Bub Means can do.
yeah, it really feels like now that we're getting like a couple of these transfers and stuff, it feels like a wide receiver by committee year, which is honestly fine given what we've had in the past. To spread it around a little more, I think it'll just make for a more dynamic offense, a little bit harder for teams to game plan around and that sort of thing. So I think it's a solid pickup.
Yep. Other news, incoming freshman Marquand Pope, who is a linebacker recruit out of Texas, has medically retired due to a spine condition. He'll still be with the program, still keeping his scholarship. They're saying that he's going to be moving into a coaching role with the staff, which is just kind of something awesome to see, keeping him around, giving him the chance to still be around football.
Yeah, that's honestly just a really sad story. I know that I think Narduzzi said they were expecting him to maybe play some this year because I guess he's technically a sophomore this year or redshirt freshman. But yeah, he was saying he might actually have seen the field some this year if he had been healthy, but happened in spring ball, I guess. And but it is cool that they're allowing him to stay with the team and that he wants to stay with the team as a coach. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely sad, but they're doing the right thing. And from what I read in that article and from hearing Narduzzi talk about it, he's a really smart guy too. That'll still be good to have like in the room, just as like you said, a player coach to kind of bridge that gap. It's a really cool story.
Yep. Okay. So more on Narduzzi's interview. He kind of clears up his Big Ten comments where he says that it comes from like sort of a feeling of place of disrespect for ACC teams where everyone's talking about the Power 2. It's like, well, everyone's looking over some really good teams in the ACC. And even, I hate to give him props, but Dabo Sweeney had a good quote to this effect where he's like, everyone was kind of, shitting on the ACC because Clemson's having a down year, and the only reason all these teams are coming up is because Clemson's having a down year. He's like, listen, like Wake Forest was really good, NC State was really good, Pittsburgh, like he called Jordan Addison that dadgum receiver and quarterback, like referring to Addison and Kenny. He's like, they were really good, but like I think that I don't think he walked it back per se, but he's like backing up. Like, listen, I think the ACC just gets not enough credit on the national stage, which is a little fair because a lot of these teams do stink, but it just kind of takes away the credit from the better teams in the league.
Yeah, for sure. I watched that whole video. I gained a little bit of a respect for Dabo after that, and I thought there was he made a really good point. But and it probably takes a decent amount for a guy like him to say that, especially with them. I'm sure he thinks that Clemson's going to be back on top this year. So for him to say that after last season ended and stuff, I think I gained some respect for Dabo after that.
Yeah, credit where credit's due there. But I think that is kind of true, and especially more so in like recent years. ACC got a bad rap for I don't know, that stretch there where it felt like it was Clemson and Alabama just trading punches every year. Like Alabama had a real tough schedule to get there, and Clemson just had a cakewalk. But that's definitely not the case anymore. Last year proved it. From the preseason poll this year, you could see that Clemson was definitely still the favorite, but other teams are starting to get this recognition in the conference, and like it's becoming more well-rounded, like a lot of the other conferences.
Yep, and as you mentioned, there was that 5-year run between like 2015, 2019, where Clemson just had piss easy games in the championship game down in Charlotte. So that it definitely did do some damage to the reputation of the league. But I think a couple of years where you have like more than one good team, and we'll get this later when we get to our ACC preview eventually, but I think it'll do a lot for the reputation of the league, trying to keep it together. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with that, but that's the topic for another day. Moving on, Narduzzi said he's actually not a fan of the divisions going away. He did have a quote in there where he said, I think a lot of teams weren't fans of being in the same division as Clemson, which is kind of funny, kind of shit talking a little bit of the other teams, but I think he's just being an old crank about that. I like the new conference play setup.
Yeah, and it definitely helps too that the conferences have been pretty kind to Pitt in the past. Might have got us to a couple conference championship games where we probably shouldn't have been, i.e. the was it 2018, I think?
18, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, of course he's going to be against it. I don't think it's a big deal. He'll adapt and figure it out, because I do think we have a pretty good draw for the teams that are in our little bubble anyway.
Yep. Then there was more comments on Addison. Kent, you take this one away because I think you're the best prepared for it.
So I know he said that, I think this is going back actually to that interview he had with Colin Dunlap, but he was basically saying that, I don't want to misquote him here, but I think he said basically that, it was about money and, about some other things, and basically touched on the reports that, Addison basically got there and wasn't happy because he wasn't getting or didn't get everything that he was promised basically when he made the decision to leave, and, touched on that Jordan's family might be texting him about like, we never said that, it wasn't about that at all, but, he knows. And I think he knew, and he's always known, and he doesn't want to talk bad on Jordan. He basically reiterated that he thinks Jordan's a good kid, and, thinks he was doing what's best for him. But at the same time, he, if it had to do with coaching, Narduzzi defended his coaching staff from last year and even said that, he thinks that the coaches that he has coming in this year with, in terms of Signetti and Underwood, he thinks they're better than the coaches that were there last year. So I think he kind of took a little bit of a dig at Whipple again there. So I think he kind of wanted to dig at Jordan a little bit, but also I don't think he has like hard feelings toward Jordan Addison still.
I think that was just more hard feelings towards the NIL stuff, more so than like anything to do with Addison. Because how can he be mad at a kid for going there and taking all the money? He kind of said it. He kind of said it in the interview. Like from the jump, he knew that he wants everybody to get paid, but like he knew that like the NIL is a slippery slope with like just paying players to play, basically. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, Kent. With that take.
I think he also said something to the effect of like, yeah, there was definitely tampering, which is just like at this point, you just say it to say it. I mean, everyone knows you can't really do anything about it, more or less.
Yeah, I agree, Mason. I think his beef is definitely still more with the NIL and with USC for tampering, and I don't think he expected Jordan to leave. Jordan entered the transfer portal at the last second, and I think it probably caught them all off guard the way it caught all of us off guard when that report came out that he might leave, because the transfer portal was closing in less than a week, and so I'm sure he's still upset about that whole instance, but I think it's nothing. I don't think he personally is like pissed at Jordan, but more so about USC and about the NIL.
Yeah. Yep, I definitely agree. Overall, though, I feel like it was a pretty good media day. Got some eyes on Pitt, whether it was from controversial takes or whatever. But it was good to hear a little bit of just like general college football news again. Feels like we had a lull there for a while.
The season is coming up quick. The only other thing is that Narduzzi is still tight-lipped on the quarterback battle. We were talking a little bit about this pre-show, but we don't expect him to announce that any sooner than 7 days before the backyard brawl. And we wouldn't be shocked if we don't know who's starting until the day of.
Yeah. Regardless of the decision, they'll probably have, an idea as they go through camp. But the longer they can make West Virginia and really everybody else kind of think about it, I think the better for us it's going to be. Especially when, haven't seen like Slovis in this offense yet, but we've seen Patty, and just the fact that we kind of know what he can do already, just like kind of keeps up that facade of like we still don't really know what they're going to do. So I love that. Keep it going as long as we can.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think if Patty hadn't played a minute of that Peach Bowl, I think everybody would be like, "Oh, it's clearly going to be Slovis." But considering Patty had a couple drives in the Peach Bowl and like looked as good as he did, I think that definitely sways people in their mind just a lot more because they just have that memory.
Yeah, those two or three drives. Though they weren't a lot, but they're definitely going to make a lot of coaches think going through the year.
Yeah, for sure, and and I think that bodes well for Pitt too, because I like personally, I expect it to be Slovis, and I think most people will, even if they don't announce it until like right before the game.
Yeah,
I think he's definitely the favorite to land the job, and probably rightfully so, but. At least in my mind as a Pitt fan, like it brings me comfort to know that like depending on like who it is, like even if it's Slovis and like God forbid like something would happen, like I'm very happy that we have like a backup that I'd be confident in as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not often. I feel like it's not often in college football that you can kind of get like you have that security blanket of a backup quarterback with like Ryan Fitzpatrick in the NFL. You don't really get that in college, and that's our Nick Patty.
Yeah. Well put. All right. One last thing for me today is the ACC Preseason Poll, the media poll, which had a total of 164 voters. Let's run it down. So, votes for the overall champion, Clemson was the favorite with 103 votes. Second place was NC State with 38. Miami gets 8 votes. Wake Forest gets 4. Pitt and Virginia both received 3. Florida State and North Carolina both get 2, and Boston College gets the lone vote. In the Atlantic Division, Clemson in first place with 111 first place votes, NC State in second with 44 first place votes, and Wake Forest in third with the remaining 6 first place votes. Going down the list then is Louisville in fourth, Florida State in fifth. Actually, Florida State got 2 first place votes. Boston College in sixth with 1 first place vote, and Syracuse in last. In the Coastal, our side of the division, Miami comes in first with 98 first place votes. Pitt in second with 38 first place votes. North Carolina with 18 first place votes comes in third. Virginia in fourth with 6 first place votes. Virginia Tech in fifth with 3 first place votes. Georgia Tech in sixth with 1 first place vote. And Duke last with no first place votes. Whoever voted Georgia Tech to win the division should be fired.
Yeah, what's the screening process for writers that get to vote? Because there's some questionable ones in there for sure. Petition to get Simplify a vote, because I think we could at least be a little bit more reasonable than that.
We put a couple of twit-longers out, say we are a media apparatus, and yeah, I think we can get something done there.
Yeah, Big J's coming soon.
Big J's, check marks coming soon. And
also, saw a stat just to give you a little bit of, even though Pitt wasn't picked to win the division and came in second with first place votes, they are 6-0-1 in the last 7 years, like going against the preseason poll. So they keep hating. We love to see it. We'll keep proving them wrong.
Also, I think I saw a stat where since Pitt joined, which was 2014, every year the writers have either picked North Carolina or Miami to win the division. And in those 7 years, those teams have respectively made it 2 out of the 7 times.
Yeah. So again, back to the writers. Who's making these decisions? Give us our flowers a little bit.
Yeah, for real. I like being the underdog though. I like kind of flying under the radar, but what are we, 5th? Dude, yeah, being 5th in the overall, I don't like that either. There's 3 Atlantic teams over them for that, and people are giving Miami their flowers a little too early too, so.
I really think that a lot of these writers are way too high on Clemson, man. That offense was unwatchable last year. You lose your offensive coordinator, you lose your defensive coordinator, and DJU is still the quarterback. I mean, I think they'll be
right at quarterback, or like kid that's at least competing for the job. I don't know if DJ's expected to beat him out, but they had a 5-star freshman come in, I think.
I think DJ is expected to start the year, but Cade Klubnik is the 5-star recruit. Yeah. I think we expected if DJ stinks it up early in the year, they'll go to him after that.
It's going to be another Trevor Lawrence thing, pretty much.
With who? Kelly Bryant?
Yeah, and then DJ will be at Mizzou next year.
The Clemson to Mizzou pipeline. More and more people are pointing this out. I don't know. I think we'll circle back to that when we get to our ACC preview.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that both Pitt isn't getting enough recognition for kind of, say what you want about the offense looking different, but basically the entire defense returns out of one corner, besides one cornerback and a couple of linebackers. And even then, our number 2 linebacker has a lot of playing experience, and Servace Dennis is going to be like an all-conference like kind of guy. So we'll see.
Check back in a couple weeks.
We'll be circling back to this at the end of the year. I think that about wraps up Media Days. So with that, let's go to where it just matters more, the SEC.
Go right ahead.
Girls ask me for that Willie D, that's how I know they feeling me. It's Simple C, the pimpin' B, what got these bitches clipped to me. You may be at the game, I guarantee you we in different seats. I seen you in the nosebleeds, but where I'm at, that isn't cheap. In the Benz, in a Jeep, make $1 million in a week. Taking off her clothes before I begin to speak. Like give me chicks. Been to London, been to France. Go to if you get the chance. Been to Amsterdam, hit the club. Hell no, I didn't dance. Rolled around a little, smoked the weed, seen the red lights.
All right, welcome to the good old Southeastern Conference. The conference where at least 3 of the teams will be overranked by the end of the year, but it doesn't matter because it just means more down there. As always, we're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. I've got 5 tiers this week. We're going to start at the bottom. Tier 5, it's the Vanderbilt zone. The team here is Vanderbilt.
Are they the only one?
They are the only ones in the Vanderbilt zone.
Okay. I think that's probably how it should be.
So the thing with Vanderbilt is that they suck. They're still rebuilding. They have obviously the worst roster in the SEC. Not a lot of impact players. I mean, it's going to be more of the same from last year. I mean, their out-of-conference includes Wake and Northern Illinois, which are 2 championship teams from last year. And you open SEC play with Ole Miss, Bama, and Georgia. I mean, your hope here is basically 2-10. You open the year on the island at Hawaii. First night game, the first true night game of the season, a 9:30 kick.
Don't sleep on the island either.
10:30 Eastern, yeah. And then, I mean, Hawaii is obviously worse than Vanderbilt, but
yes.
If they lose, that would be pretty bad.
Yeah,
they get their FCS, and they're probably not going to win another game the rest of the year.
Yeah, they're bad. There's no other way to put it. They're going to be at the very bottom. And one bit of information I do have from this offseason with Vanderbilt is their defense coordinator, Jesse Minter, leaves. He left to go to Michigan to replace Mike McDonald, who left to become the Ravens defense coordinator. Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter were both assistant coaches at the Ravens and both left to go their separate ways. So basically Harbaugh asked Mike McDonald who he would hire, and it's Vanderbilt's defense coordinator, I think he was only there a year, maybe 2. So they lose their defense coordinator. And I don't know who they got to replace him, but I'm sure that can't help them. So yeah, expect them to be very bad.
Yeah, it's not exactly easy to come in as a coordinator to have the worst defense in the SEC as well. So regardless, they could bring in fucking, I don't even know who's like the best defensive coordinator in the country, and I don't know if they could coach him up to the standard to win more than 3 games.
Yeah. I mean, they even lost, they had that one really good like NFL prospect offensive tackle. He just said fuck it and transferred to Alabama. So their one good piece is now no longer with them.
Yeah. Gonna be a rough one. When they play Wake Forest, that'll be an all-time confusing uniform game though. I'll like flip the TV on and see Vandy, and I always get Wake Forest and Vanderbilt mixed up.
That's a good point.
They wear the same colors, the black and gold.
Yeah. Yeah. So just keep an eye out for that.
They should play at Purdue Stadium for the ultimate confusion.
I was going to say, I should do a little round robin with Purdue. And
just get some old people really confused.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next tier because I don't have a lot about Vanderbilt. This tier, tier 4, is titled "Your Shit Sucks," and we're gonna start with Florida. Now, I think there's a lot of media hype around Florida because of Billy Napier coming in. I think Billy Napier is a fine coach. He did really well at Louisiana to, warrant a lot of hype around his hiring. But the problem is Dan Mullen didn't like recruiting. Like, Dan Mullen is sort of like a Mark Whipple type where he just wanted to coach ball. He wanted to draw up plays and make that work. He kind of lucked into having Kyle Trask, who was a pretty good quarterback, and a freak, and Kyle Pitts. But like, I don't think that Anthony Richardson on his own, even though he's another physical freak, is good enough to paper over those recruiting issues from Dan Mullen. Like, he's got a cannon of an arm. He's going to be super exciting to watch, but he's like inconsistent. He's young, and then you're pretty thin at your skill positions there, and your defense is young. So I think they're going to take a lot of lumps this year, and it's going to take a while to get Florida back on its feet.
Yeah, there definitely is some media hype. I think the one silver lining for them there is their offensive line is still pretty solid. Probably one of the better O lines in the SEC, so they can lean on that a little bit. And I think that will get them to win a couple conference games skills still. But when they're playing Utah out of conference, like what is that, week 1 or 2? Like that'll be a tough one. They're definitely going to take. I don't know necessarily a step back, but it's going to be a tough year for Florida.
Yeah, not much to add. Definitely a lot of hype around Anthony Richardson, and then yeah, I don't see it happening. I don't see them having a great year, but I think it's a building year for them, and they'll be maybe more problematic in the years to come.
Let's walk through the schedule here. Their first 4 are Utah, Kentucky, South Florida, and Tennessee. That looks like 1 and 3 to me.
Yeah, they're for sure going to drop to Utah and Tennessee. Could definitely see Kentucky too. Yeah, that's going to be a tough start to the season with them. Luckily, after that, they get Eastern Washington, Missouri, but then they're right back on the horse with LSU, Georgia, A&M. So
probably start 1 and 3. Eastern Washington's a win. Missouri, I'll give them the win over Missouri because I think that like Anthony Richardson might be able to go Super Saiyan in that game and just sort of use his physical talent to bully that like pretty pitiful Missouri rush defense. So that's 3 and 3. And then they finish out the final 6 with LSU, Georgia, A&M, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Florida State. 3 obvious losses, I think, with Georgia, A&M, and South Carolina. They'll beat Vanderbilt, and I think they'll probably get one of LSU or Florida State.
what does that get them to 5 wins?
5 and 7. If they win both LSU and Florida State, they'll go 6 and 6.
I could see it happening, but I feel like Florida's always good to lose a game that they shouldn't throughout the year too. So factor that in.
That's probably what South Carolina if they're favored in that game.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so Florida will go 5 and 7. Next up in this tier is Missouri, and as I mentioned before, they had an embarrassingly bad rush defense last year. I mean, these guys lost to Boston College, which is completely unserious for an SEC program. And that defense, by the way, is on his 3rd coordinator in 3 years, so that's not a good look either.
No coach there.
Yeah, I think their old defensive coordinator went to Illinois or something. And then their quarterback is also gone. Connor Bazelak went to Indiana. So it's kind of like a crapshoot in finding who to replace him. They got a couple like underclassmen, then a transfer as well. But I think
also,
Missouri...
And nothing really exciting going on the offensive side of the ball either.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Wait until they get DJ next year, then they'll be back up.
Yep.
They're waiting patiently.
I mean, also, like, the other thing with Missouri is, like, for years, they were pretty fortunate to play in the weaker side of the SEC. Like, they obviously went to the title game a couple times. But now that the East kind of has, like, obviously Georgia is otherworldly, but they've got this, like, second tier of, like, Kentucky, Tennessee, maybe throw in South Carolina if things go right. But they don't have those easy wins like they would in normal years. All right, let's move to the schedule for Missouri. First 4, Louisiana Tech, Kansas State, Abilene Christian, and Auburn. Mm. 2 and 2, maybe 3 and 1, depending on how much of a dumpster fire Auburn is.
Uh,
Go ahead, Mace.
No, I think I'm with you. I think that they'll probably beat, or they'll probably lose to Auburn. I'm sorry. So I see him at probably 2-2 at that point.
Yeah, because they'll lose to Kansas State because they can run all over them.
Yeah, yeah. So they'll probably be 2-2 at that point, and then, which is honestly, not awful if you were like actually playing in the SEC, but the fact that it's Middle Tennessee State and Abilene, not a great 2-2.
No, yeah. I mean, and then it doesn't get any better down the stretch. It's after Auburn, you get Georgia, Florida, Vanderbilt, and South Carolina. That looks like 1-3 to me. So we're looking at 3-5. Then the last four: Kentucky, Tennessee, New Mexico State, and Missouri, which is another 1-3. They're not going to beat any of those three SEC teams. So that's 4-8, 1-7 in SEC play.
Yeah.
That might get Drinkwitz fired.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. How long has he been there now?
3, I think this is his third year. He has like a 5-star wide receiver coming in though, which is strange.
That is random.
Let's move to our final team in Tier 4, which is Auburn. And I put them at the top just because they're like on paper the most talented of these teams. Like Tank Bigsby is back at running back. The O-line has 4 returning starters. And the defense was really good last year. I mean, they held Bryce Young to, 13 points. It took Bryce Young blacking out and going crazy in the last 5 minutes for Alabama to pull out of that game. I want to see, though, what the defense is, how much of that was like the talent and how much of that was because of the coordinator, Derek Mason, who left for Oklahoma State. The new DC is Jeff Schmedding, who worked with Harsin at Auburn. And then the thing I really don't like about Auburn is Zach Calzada. Like, he's basically gambling on if Zach Calzada can activate that God mode that he did against Alabama last year when he was at A&M. Because, obviously the whole offseason thing with Auburn is that they outwardly tried to fire Harsin. It didn't work, and he's still there. But I don't really like Zach Calzada. Like, he's jittery in the pocket. I remember watching him play against Arkansas, and it's like he's tap dancing in the pocket. He's like bouncing on his feet, looking back and forth. It's like he's like a leprechaun on cocaine, tap dancing in the pocket. Like I think he's a little too jittery, and they don't really have great experience at wide receiver. They have obviously Tank Bigsby, but I don't know if he's really any better than Bo Nix.
He's different than Bo Nix. But better definitely isn't the right word. Yeah, not really what you want in an SEC quarterback. Like, they call him cool, collected guy. But Tank Bigsby, what a fucking name. I just love the players that have the name that like fit the position they play. And Tank Bigsby is just perfect for a running back. But aside from that, it's really going to come down to the defense. Their offense isn't going to win them any games. It's just going to be. It does come down to the coordinator, in my opinion. I think that they have some decent potential there to be really good again. And like that Alabama game last year, if I was an Auburn fan, I'd be holding on to that like little sliver of hope because you know that you can compete with these guys.
I mean, also, TJ Finley was hurt to hell in that game. That was a Herculean effort just to even, go back and forth in overtime for a couple of drives. Ken, you got anything, or you want to look at the schedule?
No, I mean, Bo Nix leaving, I think Calzada's pretty decent replacement for him, and I think they'll be, I don't know. I think they'll be somewhat decent, but they're not going to be competing in the SEC this year, so not much else to add.
I just don't think they have like the pieces to compete on offense.
Yeah, I agree. I don't disagree with that.
So we'll go through their schedule here. Their first 4 are Mercer, San Jose State, Penn State, and Auburn. We get Penn State at home. We gave them the Missouri win, so that's 3-1, maybe 4-0 if things go right in the Penn State game.
They lost to Penn State pretty like.
It was a close game.
Yeah. So I think that them playing in at home, I think that gives them the edge. I think they end up 4-0 at that point, which is kind of crazy, honestly. Yeah. But that's when the real play starts then.
All right. So let's say 4-0 with one of them being a swing game. Next is LSU at home, Georgia on the road, Ole Miss on the road, Arkansas at home. I think they get Brian Kelly because also the weird thing about that rivalry is that before last year, the home team won every game for like a 15-year stretch.
Yeah. Two great atmospheres. Not having to play in Death Valley is always a good thing.
Mm-hmm. So,
by that point at week 5, very real chance of them being 5-0 and a little bit of unreal Auburn hype.
Going into a Georgia game too. Oh my god! All right. So after 8 games, we'll say 5-3. Their last 4 is at Mississippi State, A&M at home, Western Kentucky at home, Alabama on the road. 1-3, maybe. I'll say if they don't get they'll get 2 out of 3 of Penn State, LSU, Mississippi State. I don't know which ones they'll get, but that's 6-6 and losing 6 out of 7 down the stretch, more probably.
Yeah, I agree with those. The 2 out of the 3 that you said that can be flip games.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's move on to our next tier 3. I think these teams are just going to be fine. We'll start with LSU, Brian Kelly's program. There are a lot of expectations around this team. It's still a supremely talented program with, just being the natural recruiting powerhouse in the state of Louisiana that they are. But the interesting thing is that Brian Kelly brings in a lot of transfers to try and rejuvenate this program after the downfall from that 2019 college football playoff team. They brought in a ton on defense with the big shiny new toys. Jaden Daniels from Arizona State. I always thought he was pretty interesting there. He has a big arm, he's mobile, but the question is, can Brian Kelly going to be consistent on those underneath throws where he struggled at Arizona State? And the other thing is I don't even know if it's confirmed that he'll be the starter because you have Miles Brennan, who was hurt last year, still at LSU, and 2 highly touted QB recruits waiting in the wings behind him. At least they still have Kayshon Boutte, who's an amazing wide receiver, NFL talent. But I don't think that Kelly's going to walk in and turn the key year 1. This division is so hard.
Yeah, and it'll be his first real year in a conference, in a division too, and it'll be kind of there will be some feeling out process there when you're playing those tough games down the stretch, which they did at Notre Dame, but it's just a little bit different because of the rivalries, and like you said, it matters more down in the South.
For sure. I agree with that. I think, I know I picked USC to win the Pac-12, but it's gonna be definitely more of a learning year for Kelly and a building year than it will be for Lincoln Riley at USC, I think.
Yeah, that's a very different. Going from Oklahoma to USC is very different than Notre Dame to LSU. So I think that's a fair assessment there, Ken.
I don't think they'll be bad. I just think that year 1, they're just gonna have some lumps.
Yeah, it's gonna happen till they get a couple more recruits in there.
They might get better as the year goes on. One of those kind of teams.
Yeah, I agree. I think they'll be better. I think they might start out a little tough. I mean, we'll hear what you have to say about how their schedule starts out because I'm not sure, but they could start rough and then end the year on a high note going into next year and then build off of that. That's kind of how I foresee them going.
They actually have a pretty decently easy start to the year. They go Florida State. Oh shit!
That's in the Superdome.
Florida State in the Superdome, and then I just lost the schedule. Who comes out? My bad.
So it's Florida State in the Dome, Southern U, which is one of their FCS opponents, Mississippi State at home, New Mexico at home. I say 3-1. They lose one of Mississippi State or Florida State.
I think
Mississippi State. I don't see them losing to Florida State, honestly.
Yeah, I probably have them a little bit higher at 4-0 there.
So maybe I take back what I said before. Maybe they don't start that bad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think they're going to be competing this year, but relative to the rest of those teams at the top of the conference, but give it a year or two, I think long term Brian Kelly will work out there just fine.
So next four are at Auburn, Tennessee at home, at Florida, and then Ole Miss at home. We had them losing to Auburn. I don't think they'll beat Tennessee. I think they'll beat Florida, lose to Mississippi, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that, and I think that's like a good bet. But at the same time, like hearing that, I like kind of feel like they could theoretically win most, if not all, of those games as well. But I don't know.
I think I'm a little high on Tennessee, but
they have one of the more winnable schedules, actually, now that I look at it. I don't know. Maybe it's just the LSU bias of, I feel like everybody likes to root for them when they made that little run. I might still have a little bit of that going on, but
yeah, I agree.
The last 4 weeks are tough, minus UAB. But up to that point, I don't. They have an all right draw for the first couple weeks. First 8, probably.
First 8. Anywhere between like something between like 5 and 6 wins, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
I don't know where win. I think Mississippi State's a swing game, and then they'll beat Florida. Maybe they get Auburn or like they get Mississippi at home or something. So maybe that's like 6.
Yeah.
And then the last 4 is Alabama at home, loss. On the road, Arkansas, loss. UAB at home should be a win, and then A&M on the road, loss. So something like 6 and 6, 7 and 5.
Yeah, could see him in a bowl. We'll see.
I think a bowl is very achievable with the out of conference.
Yeah, definitely achievable.
Yeah, what they finished last year, 6 and 7. So
yeah,
they're a good team. I mean, I think they'll be a bowl team again this year, but yeah, definitely. I foresee them being a bowl team again this year for sure, but nothing crazy this year.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the next program is Mississippi State. I think last year was a pretty good referendum on like Leach's system and the air raid in the SEC. Like the system works. It'll get teams. It'll win you games. They had that awesome comeback against Auburn. They beat A&M. Like Will Rogers is like the perfect Mike Leach quarterback. He'll throw 60 times a game, throw up ridiculous numbers, and they'll win 7 to 8 games. They have really good receivers. That guy Polk was outstanding for him last year. And honestly, 7 to 8 wins at Mississippi State is fantastic for that program historically. And then on the other side of the ball, I mean, you wouldn't think about it with a Mike Leach team, but these defenses have been absolutely outstanding for Leach at Mississippi State. Their defensive coordinator is Zach Arnett. He's off the I can't remember the guy's name, but he's currently at San Diego State. But they run a really, really good defense. They're always putting out NFL caliber players. I think that'll help them. If that defense holds, then the offense gets a chance to score some points.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about Mississippi State. I think I'm probably a little bit lower on them than you are. And I don't really have a good reason for it. I just feel like, I don't know, they kind of taken a little bit of a step back. They were 6-7 last year. Graduated a little bit of talent. They are okay at quarterback. Not really great anywhere else. So I think if they can have that Mike Leach offense, they'll be okay. But it's just one that I don't really feel good about in the SEC this year.
They were 7-6 last year. Does that change your opinion?
I thought they were 6-7. They were 7-6.
7-6 won the bowl game. Or no, 7-6 they lost the bowl games. They had 7 regular season wins in the SEC.
I mean, maybe a little bit. I feel like the SEC is like the Big Ten in the fact that we're going to get to these teams, but it's like 2 teams and then there's a lot in the middle. Mississippi State couldn't be more bottom half of that middle, in my opinion.
I think it's also like a historical thing because like before Mullen and Leach, who kind of have the program operating at like a 500 level so far, like they were like a year in, year out 2, 3, 4 win team throughout most of the 2000s. And then if you go back to like the 80s and like 60s, they were just awful.
Yeah. Or maybe it's just the cowbells that I don't like. Who knows?
Or it's Brandon Walker.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I sort of agree with Mason on this one. I see them as kind of the bottom of this middle tier, and I think I think I'm not quite as high on them as you are, Zach, like Mason said, but I do really like Mike Leach, and I think I want to follow this team just because he's there and he's entertaining, but yeah, I don't have super high expectations for that team this year.
I am looking at the schedule now. They do get a brutal poll.
Yeah. Anytime you have to play, you get A&M, Bama, and Georgia is tough.
Yeah, so let's get into it. So their first 4 are Memphis at home, Arizona on the road, LSU at home, Bowling Green at home. That's 3-1. I would say easily 4-0 if they can get LSU.
Yep.
Next 4, A&M at home, Arkansas at home, Kentucky at home, Alabama on the road. Probably 0-4.
4 losses right there.
Yeah. So we're looking at 4-4, 3-5. The last 4 are Auburn, Georgia, East Tennessee State, and then Ole Miss on the road. I think Auburn is gettable if the team is like quit on Brian Harsin at the end of the year. East Tennessee State should be a win, obviously. And maybe something wacky happens in the Egg Bowl, but yeah, probably 5-7, 6-6 at best. They can get LSU.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they upset A&M again. Like this.
That would be an all-time.
Very funny.
Like post game, Jimbo's all mad. Mike Leach is Mike Leach. I don't know. Yeah, they got a tough draw.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the final team in tier 3, South Carolina. All right, so South Carolina does return a lot of players from a team that rebounded a lot earlier than a lot of people expected. Like this was, in my eyes, probably a 4-win team last year, and they ended up winning 7, if I remember correctly. 8 players returned with more than 300 snaps played. The defense and special teams were pretty good under Shane Beamer, but the offense wasn't very good, given that they were running with a wildcat quarterback for some of the year. They started like essentially a grad assistant who still had eligibility left because they had so many injured quarterbacks in week 1. And to fix that, they brought in that's a Rattler. And no matter what you think about him, no matter what you think about what he did at Oklahoma, he's still better than anything that South Carolina had in the last decade. He's coming over with OU teammate tight end Austin Stogner, Wake Forest running back Christian Beal-Smith, and then a couple receivers who combined for 2,000 plus yards and 24 touchdowns last year. They have an experienced O-line as well, but offense is the X factor here. The thing is that their schedule is really rough, and we'll get into that afterwards, but they have, like Mississippi State, a super difficult poll.
Yeah, they have a lot of good things going for them. We'll see what Spencer Rattler can do there after I would say lackluster year at Oklahoma. But I don't know if he gets better weapons, but he gets put into a different system. They might try to use him a little bit better. So he'll be kind of like a little bit of the X factor, or I don't know. I guess kind of depending on their season will be how he fits into things.
It is interesting. He's going from an air raid offense to more of a pro style in South Carolina. So that's going to be an interesting transition to see how he fares in a new offense.
Yeah. I mean, he's a mobile guy, right? So maybe some of that play action stuff, roll him out, not having to rely on his arm as much and more of his athleticism could be beneficial, possibly. But yeah, I don't know. That's going to be an interesting one that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on, because he was like, just when he came into college football and was like looked at as like one of the best recruits, and then had that year, it was like, all right, well, where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I think it completely comes down to how he does and how he handles things. Because I feel like, if they start well, and if he starts playing like the way he was supposed to, or the way he was anticipated to, I think they could be very good. But based on like his character and how we've seen he might like handle like tough times, like if they don't start well,
very true,
they could just be so bad. Like he could lose it, and they could just be terrible. So I could really see this going either way. I could see them doing very well, very average, or just flat out terrible. So I think first 3 weeks it's gonna tell you a lot. So.
Well, speaking of which, their first 4 are Georgia State at home, at Arkansas, Georgia at home, and then Charlotte at home. 2-2, most likely.
Yeah, I'm thinking 2-2. I mean, definitely 3-1 at the best.
Yeah, maybe they get Arkansas because early in the year, but KJ Jefferson's a real interesting quarterback.
Yeah, they win the other 2, 100% lose to Georgia, and then Arkansas. Who knows?
All right. Moving down to the next 4. South Carolina State at home, at Kentucky, A&M at home, Missouri at home. 2-2 probably seems fair with that.
That's about where I got him.
Yeah.
And then last 4, at Vanderbilt, at Florida, Tennessee at home, at Clemson. Probably another 2-2. So 6-6 feels right.
Yeah.
5-7, 6-6, somewhere in there.
Which, like Mississippi State, like that's pretty good for South Carolina, which had a couple good years in the early 2010s, but other than that, not a especially impressive program in the SEC.
Right.
All right. Let's move into Tier 2. Now, this is like the higher end of the middle, and this isn't exactly ordered in how good I think they'll be, but I want to start off with 3 teams that I think have very, very high expectations going into this year, but may not reach them just because of like they might not be able to either replicate what they did last year or live up to what people are expecting to be this year. So I'll start with Ole Miss. And I think the big question here is, what does the offense look like without Matt Corral? Been here for the last 3 years. He was excellent last year, got drafted and everything like that. And then past Matt Corral, you lose the top 3 running backs, and then you lose 6 of your top 7 pass catchers. Now, maybe because it's Lane Kiffin, I think his offense is pretty plug and play here, but I think they might be able to weather the storm a little bit better. Maybe they get better down as the season goes, but you're bringing in Jackson Dart from USC to compete with Luke Altmaier, who filled in for Corral in the bowl game. You've got 2 running backs transferring in from the state of Texas. You have Ulysses Bentley the fourth from SMU up on that all-name team with Tank Bigsby. And then your resident crazy person in Zach Evans from TCU, who is like scary good and talented if you get him right. You also got 3 new wide receivers from Louisville, UCF, and a Mississippi State transfer across the Egg Bowl rivalry. And you also brought in Michael Trigg from USC with Jackson Dart. You're also looking at a lot of transfer starters on defense, possibly 4 out of the 8. Realistically, I think that they should be good. The offense, like I said, is probably a little plug and play with how they run it and how it's like more a tempo thing and less like scheme. But I think expecting a repeat of 10 wins here is pretty lofty given the history of Ole Miss football.
Yeah, I see them winning 10 this year again, but I think Jackson Dart coming in is interesting. I know a lot of West Virginia fans were hopeful that he would go there, and instead they get JT Daniels. But yeah, I think Jackson Dart. I think the QB competition is one to keep an eye on, and I think Jackson ends up winning that job. But who knows, Ole Miss fans? If you're out there and you want to disagree with me, let me know. But yeah, I think 10 wins is going to be hard to replicate this year.
It definitely will. I kind of do. I kind of look at them like Pitt a little bit, right? Because like when we were like around bowl season last year, when they were when we were coming towards the end, like those projections, they were in like a lot of the bowl games that we were looking at there. Coming off a great year, they lose their starting quarterback. How are they going to fill him in for that? So they get Jackson Dart in. I think he'll be all right. Get a lot of other players just from transfers and whatnot, whereas Pitt, I think, kept a little bit more, but also got some transfers. So it's kind of like a conference comparison there. But I think we have more upside to what we did than what they did. But they're definitely still in that top half part, like you said, Zach, of the SEC.
Yep. All right, so let's walk through the schedule. They start out super, super easy. You got Troy at home, Central Arkansas at home, at Georgia Tech, Tulsa at home. 4-0 should be the expectation there.
Yeah.
Your next 4 are Kentucky at home, at Vanderbilt, Auburn at home, and then at LSU. Probably 3-1, maybe 2-2 if Brian Kelly's got it going down the stretch.
Yep. Swing one of those games. Yeah.
So we'll say.
I said 2-2 there.
Okay, we'll give them 6-2. SEC play is pretty hard. Final 4 at A&M, Bama at home, at Arkansas, Mississippi State at home. I think they could go 2-2. I think they could beat A&M again. That'd be really funny.
So who do you have them listed to there?
Probably
if you have them over A&M.
Mississippi State.
Okay.
Which is 8-4, 7-5, something like that.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. That would be my guess even before you said the schedule, like 7-5, 8-8. Or 7-5, 8-4.
Although I will say, I don't think it's going to happen. But if by some way Ole Miss finds a way to miss a bowl game after those first 4 games to start the year, relegation. Because that's
if you don't beat Vanderbilt and Auburn, that's like you have Vanderbilt, Auburn, and Mississippi State. Like you should go 7-5 here.
Yeah. If they, I would be very surprised if they can't somehow just scratch and crawl their way to playing an extra game.
Yeah. So speaking of the team I said is on upset alert, A&M. Like, to put things lightly, the expectations on this team are because this team is so stupidly talented. I mean, there's just like an egregious amount of blue chip recruits on the defense, on the O-line. Devin A. Shane is like an amazing running back. You've got experience at wide receiver with Anaya Smith and Chase Lane. Another all-name team here with Moose Muhammad III. The question is, as it usually is with A&M, and it probably has been for the last 5 years, is who's throwing in the ball? Does Jimbo have his quarterback? Max Johnson had some pretty good games at LSU. He had that Florida game in the fog that threw them out of the college football playoff a couple years ago. And he might have been hampered with, subpar play calling once those great OCs left and a bad situation overhead with Ogeron. Is it Haynes King, the highly regarded guy from last year, we got injured early? Is it their highly four-star Connor Weigman? I don't know. Like, Jimbo's quarterbacks have not been outstanding. They've been pretty middling since Jameis at FSU. Like, Kellen Mond was just always sort of a game manager, not really an excellent quarterback like Jameis was. And I don't know if Jimbo's got that yet. I mean, Saban's looking for revenge after that loss last year, and this team found a way to lose to both Mississippis last year. Like, the expectations, I think, are just too high just because they haven't proven anything.
It's been a lot of the NIL stuff. They've been the one to know that they're kind of like fully embracing it. They're going to pay everybody. They're going to try to get the best recruits. I'm pretty sure they have the best class in the country. So it's really just going to be how can they actually develop it. And I think I'm with you. I still don't think that they have their quarterback. Alabama and Georgia are still obviously very talented. They're going to have a great year. But they'll probably come up short to one of those other two again.
Yeah, not much to add. I agree with that. I think they'll come up a little bit short, but they'll be a solid team this year.
All right, let's walk through the schedule. First four: Sam Houston at home, App State at home, Miami at home, and then Arkansas at home. It would be funny if App State pulled another App State, but 3-1, 4-0. If because that Arkansas win over A&M last year was pretty fluky, but I don't know. I like KJ Jefferson a lot, so
it's also that's in Dallas too, right?
Yeah, it's in Jerry World.
So neutral site kind of throws a little corkscrew in there too, but I think they end up getting them. A&M win.
That Miami game could be interesting too, honestly.
It's pretty early in the season. I think they'll beat the shit out of Miami.
Well, dude, honestly, we got to root for Miami in that one though, because if they even make it a game, that looks great for us in the ACC.
All right, let's say 3-1, 4-0. Next four, on the road Mississippi State, on the road at Alabama, on the road at South Carolina, and then home for Ole Miss. I would say, like, okay, they're definitely gonna. I think they're gonna beat Mississippi State and South Carolina. They're gonna lose to Alabama, definitely. I think they'll split Arkansas and Ole Miss. They'll get one of those two.
Yep.
So we're looking at 6-2 into the Final Four, which is Florida at home, at Auburn, UMass at home, and then LSU at home. So I don't know. That's probably 4-0 in the last four. So
I think so. Yeah,
I did it down.
10-2, 11-1 if they beat everyone but Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah. What if they go undefeated and until week 11 and lose to UMass?
That would be something. That would be something.
I just root for storylines, baby.
It's gonna happen. Put your money on it.
Yeah.
So the next team, which I think has been saddled with a lot of expectations, and I think this team probably has the best like the best roster to do it. Like I think A&M, even though they probably should go 10-2, might drop another 1 or 2 games just because if that quarterback situation is still looking bad. Like Tennessee, I'm pretty confident in it's because of Hendon Hooker. I mean, this guy was pretty much unstoppable after coming in for, the bum Joe Milton in that Pitt game. He had 30 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. That's 16th in total QBR in the nation. He's a threat through the air and on the ground as well. And like that up-tempo offense just absolutely nukes bad defenses. We saw it we saw how good it can be. They went punch for punch with Pitt last year. Jabari Small is an excellent running back. Cedric Tillman is a standout wide receiver. This guy had 200 yards receiving against Alabama and 150 against Georgia. I mean, you've got other guys vying for playing time with number 2, including Brew McCoy, who flip-flopped between Texas and USC I don't know how many times. The question here is the defense going to be able to keep up and not get gassed with, how many plays this offense is running and how quickly it moves down the field?
Yeah, they're an interesting one. I think the quarterback play is really what elevates them above a lot of other teams in the conference. Hendon Hooker is really, really solid, and if we can be honest, it kind of scares me for that Week 2 game. It really does. I mean, I know we've talked about it all offseason, the pressure that we can get on quarterbacks and how great our defense is. We're bringing a lot of people back, but I'd be lying if I said he wasn't a guy that worried me on our schedule. As for the rest of the SEC, I think they're going to be one of the better teams, like contrary to what Tennessee has been for the past couple of years. They're moving in the right direction. They're going to be a solid team. They're pretty talented.
Yeah, I think they're moving in the right direction, but I'm not as high on them. I think they'll be. I mean, I want to hear their schedule. You guys have it pulled up. I don't, but
yeah. So let's look at it. First 4. Ball State at home, Pittsburgh on the road, Akron at home, Florida at home.
3-1.
3-1. I'd be lying though if I said I wasn't scared about that Tennessee Pittsburgh game. I think it's gonna be a great game, and I think it's gonna be a real litmus test for both teams.
Yeah, I agree. That'll be telling for both teams for sure.
But obviously, as a Pitt podcast, 3-1. Next 4 are LSU on the road, Alabama at home, Tennessee Martin at home, and then Kentucky at home.
Sorry, what was the first one?
LSU on the road. 2-2?
Yeah, probably. They'll for sure lose to Bama, for sure beat UT Martin, and then they'll split with LSU and Kentucky probably.
Okay. I'm more confident in them losing to Kentucky.
I think I am too. I just could see it's the SEC. I could see it going the other way, but yeah, I think I'm with you.
Okay, yeah. So that's 5-3 after 8 games. Their final 4 are at Georgia, Missouri at home, at South Carolina, then at Vanderbilt. That's 3-1, 9-3. It's a really good season.
At the very worst, 2-2, but yeah, 3-1.
Yeah.
Okay, 9-3. I mean, that's an excellent season, based on Tennessee's recent history. So,
yeah, I would be the biggest Volunteer fan after September 10th. I just want them to go on a tear. We'll light the fire under them and let them go.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. I personally I could see them losing to LSU and Kentucky, so 8-4. But yeah, I mean that's still solid. I don't know. We'll see.
I gotta find. I think that a lot of you guys are pretty high on LSU, but I think it's a lot of Joe Burrow blindness and that great team. Then you still, it's like
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Shit, why can't I find this?
Like, do I think they should? No. I think I agree with what Mason said. I think they split those two games, and it's more. And I think you're right. Like, more likely they lose to Kentucky, but saying I could see that happen. I think of this team as just like in general, like an 8-win team this year, not a 9-win team. But after going through their schedule, I could see it for sure.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like Tennessee. They might find a way to shit their pants in one other game, but you know. All right. Let's move on to. Speaking of Kentucky, let's move on to them. I have them in tier 2. They definitely have some pretty high expectations, especially with like this like NFL buzz that Will Levis is getting. I mean, I don't think he was like he wasn't obviously the best quarterback in the world last year. He had a completion percentage. He had a completion percentage below 70%. He had 13 interceptions, but like it's sort of like with Josh Allen, with his success now, is like he's got like all the tools, quote unquote. He's like big. He can run the ball. He's got a big arm, but like he's that X factor. Like and obviously he's got Christopher Rodriguez, the 1,000-yard running back, to lean on. His status is still up in the air because of, I believe, a DUI that he got over the offseason. So if Rodriguez were to not play this season, I think that would automatically lower my expectations for this team. The other issue is that they have to replace Wan'Dale Robinson after going to the NFL. So you're gonna have to find a downfield receiving threat. Then on defense, I mean, you've got a lot of talent. Mark Stoops done a great job recruiting. But really the X factor is that quarterback running back duo in Levis and Rodriguez.
So, question for you, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
Factor quarterback Will Levis. Do you really want your X factor to be the guy that puts mayo in his coffee?
Dude, that made me.
I was going to say we have to bring up the mayo in the coffee.
That made me sick. Oh my god.
I was sitting here, a vein was popping out of my head trying to not bring it up, but I can't tell if the guy does it like as a bit, like if he's trying to be funny, or if that's something he actually does. But either way, just a weird move.
It got all chunky when he put it in too. Like it almost made me gag and throw up. Like that was seriously disturbing stuff. He's been put in the penalty box for just a bad look on white people. Like we're gonna have to talk to him on the bench, go over the film on the iPad, and tell him, hey, no more plays like this. No more turnovers.
Yeah. If you're gonna put mayo in your coffee, it better be Duke's mayo or something like that. I don't know.
Don't put mayo in your coffee.
Yeah, no, but he will be. It's going to depend a lot on him. I feel like he's the best quarterback they've had. Like I'm trying to go through my head right now, and Kentucky's never really a school you think of for quarterbacks. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with just a little bit of talent there. When they are usually pretty good at running the ball, like you said, with Christopher Rodriguez possibly playing.
Let's run through this schedule. They get Miami of Ohio at home. They go to Florida. They get Youngstown State at home, and then Northern Illinois at home. 4-0 probably. Northern Illinois is good, but they'll out-talent them.
Yeah.
Next 4. At Mississippi, home for South Carolina, home for Mississippi State, and then at Tennessee. I know on paper this looks like 4-0, but one of those games they will lose. I don't know which one it is. They'll lose one of those games.
Like they literally might have the equal chance to lose all 4 of those games.
It's called 2-2.
Yeah.
So 6-2, not too bad. Final 4 weeks of the season, at Missouri, Vanderbilt at home, Georgia at home, Louisville at home. So 3-1, 9-3. That's not bad, you know.
Yeah, that's a solid year. They'll make a little noise. They'll be, probably ranked pretty high in the conference. So they play Georgia at the end of the year. But yeah, it's a nice little year for Kentucky.
They're on a run. And then, okay. So our last team in Tier 2 is the team that does the on-field equivalent of breaking your kneecaps with a baseball bat over and over and over again. That is Sam Pittman's Hogs, the Arkansas Razorbacks. I am really high on this team. They had a kind of a breakout year last year, and that's thanks to their quarterback, KJ Jefferson. He's got a cannon for an arm. He's like, there's like shades of Cam Newton in this guy's game, if I'm being honest. If he can develop as a passer, like they can soar very high. And to pair with that, they brought in Jaden Hazelwood from Oklahoma as a transfer wide receiver, and that automatically gives him a target to work with now that Treylon Burks is gone. And then the backfield, I mean, you've got 3 running backs that combined for 1,000 yards, and I mean, you saw what they can do in that Texas game early last year where they ran for like 250 yards in that game. Like, they're just going to run the ball down your throat. This is like ultra Kentucky, and possibly, I'll put it out there, KJ Jefferson better than Will Levis. Not to mention 4 or 5 starters are back on the O-line. Now Arkansas runs a really unique defense in the SEC because they run a 3-2-6, which means they have a nose tackle, which isn't very common in today's realm of college football, but it is interesting. They kind of struggled in Pittman's first season with it, but they've been getting better. You know, they really did hold A&M to doing almost nothing last year. And I think that basically, as far as KJ Jefferson goes, this team goes. Like, if he has another year on that development track that he had last year, like the same pace, this team's going to go places.
Yeah, they're a fun team to keep an eye on. A lot because of what you said with KJ Jefferson just slanging that thing. But the defense too is interesting. And shout out to another really great all-time name guy with Bumper Pool being one of their linebackers as a guy to look out for. Kind of the centerpiece of that defense. So will be an important part of, like you said, they kind of struggled a little bit at times, but had some wins as well. So ironing that out will help them be probably, I guess they're a top 3, top 4 team in the SEC.
I think I could slot them in. Like, I think it's them, Tennessee, A&M, and like Kentucky all competing for that like number 3 spot.
Yeah.
Let's look at the schedule. So they start off with bangers. They go Cincinnati at home, South Carolina at home, Missouri State at home, and then A&M in Jerry World.
That game in Jerry World is going to be they're obviously their first test, but like, how good is this team really?
Mm-hmm.
Which will be cool to do it, in Jerry World, neutral site, just duking it out, them and A&M.
I hate to do this as Cincinnati, but there's a good chance that they start 4-0 with the schedule, to be honest. Like, I think 3-1 is like more likely they'll split Cincinnati and A&M, but I can see 4-0 here.
Yeah, I could see anywhere from 2-2 to 4-0 here.
All right, so let's split it, call it 3-1. Next 4 are Alabama at home, Mississippi State on the road. Another banger game here. BYU in Provo, and then at Auburn.
I forgot about at BYU. That'll be a fun game too. Mixing that one into the conference play at the end of the year or middle of the year.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a banger. I think 3-1 again, maybe 2-2 if BYU is like really good. I mean, BYU returns like 95% of like their production from last year, so that's a swing game. I can see that going either way, but maybe they just out talent them.
Yeah.
So we'll say 6-2 through 8 games. Their final 4 line up really well. They go Liberty at home, LSU at home, Ole Miss at home, and then on the road at Missouri. That might be 10-2 for Arkansas.
Damn. Arkansas going 10-2 in the SEC. What's going on?
Sam Pittman's got them boys right.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels good. For whatever reason, Arkansas just feels like one of those teams you can kind of root for in the SEC. I don't know why, but maybe it's just because they're fun to watch. Maybe it's because they have been not great for so long, but it's cool to see them doing well. I think it's good for the conference.
I mean, they play a really fun style of ball. I will say that. Just mashing the run game. I love watching teams like that can just make another team mad by running the ball down their throat.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Tier 1, the national title contenders. Let's start with Georgia. The reigning champion. Title defense starts now. The question is, can Stetson Bennett do it again? I mean, the offense doesn't ask a lot of him. But, essentially what Georgia does now is they just create running backs in a lab who will run for probably, like 1,200 yards combined. Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington, though, are two really interesting. I mean, Brock Bowers is probably like the number 1 tight end in the country. And then, not to mention, they have Arik Gilbert, who was a super highly touted recruit from who transferred from LSU. The thing is, those are all tight ends. None of those are really wide receivers. So they're probably going to be running like 2009 style SEC offenses. I mean, I have no questions that their line is going to be good on offense. And then the question on the other side of the ball is Georgia going to be able to replace all that talent in the front 7? I mean, Jalen Carter is back. He's probably going to be like a top 5 pick in the draft. You have other guys on the line in the linebacking core coming as well. Kirby Smart runs a hell of a defense there. And then you also have cornerback Calais Ringo, who is projected as a pretty high draft pick as well. He had 2 picks last year, 8 pass defenses. I feel like it's going to be more of the same, right? It's more or less the same team with different faces from last year.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. They're gonna play tough defense. They're not gonna give up a lot of points. They're gonna run the ball, and they're just gonna fucking win games. I don't want to give my pick away so far, like for the conference champion, but they will absolutely be there at the end of the year. I think this is as sure a thing as you can get there.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I think we all know this team is going to be very much in contention for a national championship again this year. And, yeah, not much else to
add. Do we want to go through the schedule, or do we just want to say 12-0? Because I might be ready to just say that. I'm looking at it here. So just to run through it real quick, they get Oregon in Atlanta for the opening weekend neutral site game. Then they get Sanford at home, South Carolina on the road, Kent State at home. Then go to Missouri. They get Auburn at home, Vanderbilt at home. Then they get Florida at home, Tennessee at home. And they're on the road at Mississippi State and Kentucky, and then they finish the year Georgia Tech at home. Realistically, it's 12-0 unless Tennessee or Kentucky overperforms.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think they get arguably their toughest game of the year out of the way week 1 with Oregon too, and they're just kind of coasting at that point. So they're definitely going to be when you get to Tennessee or Kentucky, they've been kind of foot off the gas for 7 weeks at that point. So I don't really see it happening.
Yeah,
I don't see it happening either.
I'm talking like crazy hypotheticals here. Like realistically, it's 12-0.
If you're gonna pick one game, if you're gonna pick one that they could theoretically lose, but realistically, it's not happening.
Yeah, so let's play this game. If you had to pick one game for them to lose theoretically, who do you think it is?
Probably, honestly, like what Tennessee's doing better to beat them more so than anybody else. If they can just, it's kind of like Tennessee's high-powered offense versus Georgia's defense. Like if they can just somehow get a couple big plays, breakaway stuff, and then somehow contain Georgia's run game, if I had to pick one, I think that's probably what it would be.
I agree.
That would be my pick as well.
It's just like the matchup of offense to defense there gives them the highest probability. I don't think what Kentucky's doing running the ball a lot is really going to work for them or really any of the other teams either.
Right, yeah. Tennessee has the offense to scare Georgia, and no one else does unless Mississippi State goes nuclear, but I'm not going to even, consider that possibility.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to happen at all. I don't think that game's even probably going to be close. So, but as you said, if we had to pick one, that would be my pick.
All right, let's move on to the other side. The other Titan, Alabama. They're probably going to be favored to win the conference this year. I think they are already, and with good reason. Bryce Young, even though I don't like him as an NFL quarterback, he's a fantastic college quarterback who won the Heisman last year. Nothing to sneeze at, right? The offense is going to look different at skill positions. Jahmyr Gibbs is an amazing running back they brought in from Georgia Tech. However, I mean, he's like plug and play, right? Their running game wasn't very good last year, but the receivers have to step up. And you can see why, because they brought in a lot of transfers here. Jermaine Burton comes in from Georgia. They also got Tyler Harrell from Louisville, who's a pretty good deep threat as well, kind of an all over the field kind of guy. But like the returning guys who are coming back, like Ja'Cory Brooks and Trayshawn Holden, JoJo Earl, Cameron Latu at tight end, like you could see in the title game when Mechie gets hurt and James Williams were hurt as well. They couldn't step up to beat that Georgia defense. The line struggled a lot last year. Basically, they didn't get their shit together until the Auburn game last year, with like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Realistically, it's Alabama. You expect that to get better, but if they continue to struggle like they did early in the season, throughout most of the season last year, that could be a question mark in games, especially like when they go to bring in A&M, who has that fantastic defensive line. And then they have another Heisman candidate on the other side of the ball. Will Anderson is honestly pretty good bet to win the Heisman. He is amazing. Like teams will focus on him and they'll still produce numbers. That just leaves other Alabama players to get the focus on Will Anderson allows other players kind of slip by, create pressure, get sacks in the backfield, tackles for loss. They also
when was the last time a defensive player won it?
Charles Woodson in the early 2000s.
Far.
They're also bringing back linebacker Henry To'o, if that's correct. And then when the secondary struggled last year, they said, okay, that's fine. We'll bring in Eli Ricks from LSU. National championship or bust, 12-0.
Yeah. Like you alluded to, the only real chink in the armor is their offensive line, but I think they're going to get that ironed out. And the difference between them and Georgia is where Georgia really lost a lot of talent, Alabama kind of brings more of it back through existing players, and then went out and get some transfers, and they're always going to have a good recruiting class too. So Georgia got the better of them last year, but really don't see that happening again. I think they'll go 12-0. They're going to be my pick to win the conference over Georgia, and probably win it all this year.
Yeah, let's play the same game. So their schedule is Utah State at home. They go to Texas. They bring in Louisiana Monroe. And starting SEC play, they get Vanderbilt at home. They go to Arkansas. They bring in A&M to Tuscaloosa. At Tennessee, Mississippi State at home. LSU on the road. At Ole Miss against Austin Peay during SoCon Saturday. And then Auburn at home. Pick one. If they were to lose, where would you see it happening? Because I think my answer is the same. It might just be Tennessee. They're probably the only offense that can go punch for punch with Bryce Young, and they did have sort of a game through the first half last year.
Yeah, for a similar reason, I could see that. Maybe the only other option would be A&M if they just
if they figure it out.
Yeah, kind of like all that talent that they have really comes together like for one game, and they have a perfect game. I could see it there as well, but really need a lot from Jimbo and the guys there to get that one done.
Yeah, my pick was going to be A&M. Another option. I mean, the Iron Bowl. I don't foresee that happening, but that could be another choice. That would probably be my.
Gave them trouble last year. They gave them trouble last year when you wouldn't think they did.
Yeah. No, you didn't expect them to come close in that game. And Auburn should have won that game. So, Iron Bowl would also be my next pick.
Throw out the records for the Iron Bowl.
But that was in Jordan-Hare, and the thing with the Iron Bowl is that the weird stuff with like the kick six was in an odd year. If you remember in 2019. Gus Malzahn runs that weird trick play to win like 48-45. And then in the first season of Tua, they also beat Alabama at home. Even years tend to not go so well for Auburn. They tend to get pretty much turned into dust. So I don't see that being the case here either.
Yeah.
So we alluded to the picks. It's going to be Alabama, Georgia, maybe Tennessee if things go right. Who knows? So let's give out our picks. Mason, why don't you start? You already kind of alluded to yours.
Yeah. Not exactly take Quake by any means, but I'm going Bama, Georgia. Bama as the conference champion.
I'm also going Bama, Georgia. Bama's champion.
Come on, Zach. Do it for the graphic.
I'm not.
Do it for the graphic.
I'm going to say Bama's going to win it all. Fuck it. Georgia's got a championship hangover. Tennessee wins the East.
Let's go.
Let's make the graphic interesting. Let's get my friend David really mad I didn't pick Georgia.
Can't wait to tell people that Pitt beats the SEC East champion week 2.
You know what? We got to start the narrative somewhere, right? All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. As always, I've been your host, Zach Kaminsky. You can follow me on Twitter at I'm Real Angry. My co-hosts Mason and Kent, you can find them at Clayson_Ming and at Kenton VW. Is it underscore VW?
Honestly, can't even remember right now. I think so.
Make sure to follow the pod at Simplify Pod. Rate us on Apple and Spotify. 5 stars would help us out a lot. If you have any questions you want to answer it on the show, feel free to DM or reply to any of the podcast tweets. And with that, see you next week for the Group of 5.
Hail to Pitt.
H2P.